Welcome back, everybody. We are diving deep today into, um, well, the creation stories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from the Bible and the Quran.
Okay.
So we're going to be looking at the, kind of the commonalities where they differ,
Right.
maybe uncover some surprises along the way.
I love surprises.
Yeah, so, our main source material today
Okay.
is this text called Evidence of Nature's Creation in Holy Bible and Holy Quran Sharif.
Okay.
And it makes a pretty bold claim right off the bat.
Oh.
It says that both texts point to a specific God
Interesting.
with a specific name as the creator.
Okay. I'm intrigued, so let's dive in.
I know. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, to start off, it seems like both agree on the 6 days of creation thing.
Right, yeah, the 6 days. That's a pretty common thread through a lot of traditions.
Yeah.
With God resting on the 7th. And that number 7 itself, has a lot of symbolic weight in many religions.
I was just going to say that. That's really interesting. It represents, like, completion.
Yeah, completion.
Divine perfection.
Like a perfect cycle being fulfilled.
I see. So it's not just about the number of days. It's kind of like a deeper meaning.
Exactly.
But here's something I thought was interesting.
Okay.
In Genesis, God initially tells humans to only eat plants.
Oh, interesting.
No meat.
Huh.
It's right there, Genesis 1.29.
You've hit on something that has sparked a lot of discussion.
Really?
Over time, yeah. Dietary laws and their meaning have definitely
In full
evolved.
words, yeah.
But it's interesting because this detail highlights, the idea that, at least in the beginning, according to Genesis, that plant-based existence was like the intended order.
Fascinating. Okay, get ready for this next one.
Okay.
Both the Bible and the Quran seem to suggest that God has a human-like form.
Oh, wow.
I know. Genesis 1.26 even says, "Let us make man in our own image." Pretty unexpected, right?
It is. It really is. The idea of God being anthropomorphic.
Anthropomorphic.
Anthropomorphic, meaning having human-like qualities or form,
Okay.
has been a subject of debate, among theologians for centuries.
Yeah.
Some take it literally, others see it as more metaphorical.
Right.
But finding this concept in both texts,
Yeah.
that's definitely something worth exploring further.
Absolutely. Okay, and there's one more thing from our source I have to bring up.
Okay.
It claims that both the Bible and the Quran name the creator God as Kabir.
Now this is where things get a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
So the Quranic verses that are mentioned, Surat Furqani 25.52, 58, and 59,
Okay.
they do use the word Kabir.
Okay.
However, Kabir can also just mean great.
Oh, okay.
So when you look at these verses in their full context, it's not necessarily saying that Kabir is God's actual name.
So maybe our source is jumping to a conclusion a little bit.
Possibly, yeah. It's just very important to approach these texts with a nuanced understanding. Translations differ.
Right.
Interpretations can vary.
Yeah.
Historical context, you have to keep all that in mind.
Good point. It's like, there's always more to this story
Absolutely.
when it comes to these ancient texts.
Always.
Now, our source also mentions this. This guy, Dharam Das Ji,
Okay.
who seemed to question both the Vedas and the Quran.
Right.
Can you tell me a little more about him?
Yeah, so Dharam Das Ji, he was a saint and a poet back in the 16th century. And he really kind of shook things up in what's called the Sant Mat tradition, which is a spiritual path that focuses on inner devotion and seeking divine knowledge.
Okay.
And he was known for being pretty critical of religious scriptures, actually.
Wow.
And believed in finding a true spiritual master to guide you.
So like outside of those texts.
Yeah, potentially.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
so Supreme God apparently had something to say about Dharam Das Ji questioning the Vedas and the Quran.
that's right. According to the text, Supreme God said that the Vedas and the Quran aren't inherently false. The issue is more about how people misunderstand or misinterpret them.
So it's not the texts themselves, it's more the human element.
Exactly, the human element.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like playing a game of telephone.
Right.
Where the message gets jumbled up along the way.
Exactly.
But this is just the tip of the iceberg.
It is.
What else can we expect in part 2 of our deep dive?
Well, in part 2, we're going to delve into this concept called a Tativ Darshi saint.
A Tativ Darshi saint?
Yes. Which suggests a very deep level of spiritual understanding and guidance. It's mentioned in the Quran.
Okay.
And I think it'll add a whole other layer to our exploration.
Okay. I'm ready?
Yeah.
And for those of you listening,
Yes.
make sure to come back for part 2.
Guys do.
Where we'll continue to unravel the mysteries of these ancient texts.
We will.
And the insights they hold.
Yeah, some real gems in there.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into the creation narratives from the Bible and the Quran.
It's good to be back.
I've been thinking a lot about that whole Kabir thing.
Oh, yeah.
From part 1.
Okay.
Even if it's not, like, directly stated as God's name in those verses.
Right.
The fact that it appears at all in connection with creation.
Yeah.
It just seemed significant to me.
It really is fascinating how this single word, Kabir, has generated so much discussion and different interpretations,
Right.
It just highlights the power of language.
Yeah.
And how even the subtlest nuances can have major implications.
Especially when we're talking about theology.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to put together a puzzle.
Yeah.
But we're not even sure if we have all the pieces. Or if we're putting them together in the right way.
Yeah, the right way.
But I guess that's part of what makes it so intriguing.
Intriguing, yeah.
Speaking of intriguing pieces, our source material brought up this idea of Haitatav-Darshi saint.
Yes, the Tattav-Darshi saint.
Which I have to admit I'd never heard of before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's a term that points to a profound depth of spiritual understanding.
Okay.
And a unique ability to guide others.
Okay, so guide others.
Yeah.
And Tattav-Darshi literally means seer of truth. Okay, so seer of truth, what does that mean?
In this context.
Yeah, like what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so essentially a Tattav-Darshi saint is believed to have achieved a direct, experiential understanding of the ultimate truth.
Of reality itself.
Of reality itself. They're not just relying on scriptures or dogma.
Right.
They've had a first-hand personal encounter with the divine.
So they're like spiritual explorers who have gone beyond the map.
That's a great way to put it.
And they can kind of lead others to that same understanding.
Precisely.
Wow, okay.
And what's really interesting is that the Quran, specifically in Surat Furqani 25.59, actually encourages seeking out a Tattav-Darshi saint.
Hold on, the Quran actually says that?
It does.
To go like outside of that specific tradition to find truth.
Well, it speaks to the idea that sometimes genuine spiritual understanding requires guidance from someone who has walked the path themselves.
Okay.
Someone who has attained a level of awareness that goes beyond the limitations of any one text or tradition.
It's like if you wanted to climb Mount Everest.
Right.
You wouldn't just set off on your own, right?
Exactly.
You'd find an experienced Sherpa.
Right.
Who knows the terrain and the dangers.
Yes.
And can guide you.
Help you navigate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the Tattav-Darshi saint is like the spiritual Sherpa.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it.
It can help you navigate the landscape of faith.
The complex landscape of faith.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but what does that mean for the rest of us?
Right.
Who aren't,
Who aren't Tattav-Darshi saints?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it raises an important question.
Okay.
Are we content with simply accepting interpretations that have been handed down to us?
Right.
Or are we actively seeking a deeper, more personal understanding?
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on to part 3, I have to ask your thoughts on that whole claim that both the Bible and the Quran suggest a specific name for God.
Right.
Is it groundbreaking or is it just a misinterpretation?
Well, as we discussed earlier, the verses from the Quran that are cited don't definitively state that Kabir is the name of God.
Okay.
But the fact that the word appears in those verses in a context related to creation and divine attributes, it definitely raises some interesting questions. It's something that warrants further investigation.
Absolutely.
And contemplation.
I agree.
For sure.
For sure. And that's exactly what we're going to do in part 3.
Yes.
We'll explore the potential implications of this claim.
Okay.
As well as some broader themes that have emerged.
Sounds good.
Throughout our deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. So for everyone listening, make sure to join us for the final part of our creation narrative deep dive.
The final part?
Yeah, we'll continue to unravel these mysteries.
Yes, we will.
And see what other insights we can uncover together.
That's right.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. I have to say, after everything we've talked about, I'm starting to see these texts in a whole new light.
Me too. It's been quite the journey.
Right. So we can't wrap up without revisiting that whole Kabir mystery.
Right. The Kabir mystery.
Even if those verses don't explicitly say it's God's name.
Right.
The fact that it comes up at all in connection with creation.
It's pretty compelling.
I know. It feels like more than a coincidence.
It really is fascinating how much discussion this one word has generated.
I know, right?
It highlights how important it is to, approach these texts with a critical eye.
Right.
And to avoid these overly simplistic interpretations.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute.
Okay.
If both the Bible and the Quran, even indirectly, suggest a specific name for God,
Yeah.
why isn't this more widely known?
That's a great question.
Right.
It gets to the heart of religious history and tradition.
Yeah.
And how these interpretations evolve over
Like
time.
different schools of thought emerge, right?
Exactly.
And they all have their own take.
It's almost like a giant game of telephone.
Oh, I like that.
Where the original message...
And maybe distorted along the way.
Exactly. Add to that the challenges of translation.
Right, of course.
The cultural context and the human tendency to, hold on to familiar beliefs.
Right.
It's not surprising that some interpretations become dominant
Yeah.
while others kind of fade away.
It's amazing to think that with these texts,
Yeah.
even after centuries of study,
Right.
there's still so much we don't know.
Absolutely. There's always more to learn.
So as we wrap up, what's the key takeaway? Like, what should our listeners take from all this?
I would say approach these texts with an open mind.
Open mind.
Curiosity,
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right.
Dig deeper.
Yeah.
Seek out those different perspectives.
Because the truth is multifaceted.
Exactly.
Well said. Okay, it's time to wrap up this episode.
It has been a journey.
We've covered so much from the 6 days of creation
To the Tot of Darshi Saint.
and that whole Kabir mystery.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep those minds open, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.